Hey guys, Jake Steele, Iron and Steel. This is podcast episode number 6, and I really appreciate you being here. So, this is going to be a little bit different. I'll still read a story off of my website, which is ironandsteel.com. But this one's a relatively quick story. It's just kind of a rant about the hot rod community and our hobby, and it's pretty quick. So, I'm going to blast through that, and then we're going to do some Q&A stuff. So, I had received a few messages and emails asking, questions about this or that, and so it prompted me to put a thing on Instagram saying, hey, if you have any questions about anything that I do, whether it's, hot rod and custom cars, buying cars, building cars, writing about cars, running this website, anything, just ask and I'll answer them, as best I can. So I actually got quite a few good questions and comments, and so we'll get through this story, and then when that's over with, I'm going to go through and we'll answer some of these questions. So again, ironandsteel.com. This story is called Why Can't You Just Be Normal? And it's just sort of a rant about our hot rod community and how strange of a thing it really is in the grand scope of the world. So this is it. Kick back, relax, and we'll see where this goes. Thanks again for being here. First, I should give a full disclosure. I really have no idea what, quote, normal is. And honestly, I couldn't be happier about that. What the rest of the world does is frankly none of my business. If the normies want to spend a Sunday watching football, slapping their broskies a metric shit ton of high fives, and spilling Bud Light onto the floor of their man cave like a bunch of fucking chimpanzees, more power to them. Look, just because I can't relate doesn't make it wrong. It's just different. And the reality is, I'm the abnormal one, not the Chads and the Kyles of this world. It's their world, really. I just live here and attempt to navigate it. Now, if you're here listening to this podcast right now, you're likely in the same boat. You too are likely afflicted with the same sickness as me. You too are most likely a hot rodder. And as such, you may have noticed the fact that you're a little different than most people you encounter on a daily basis. Your coworkers, the guy behind you at Home Depot, other dads at your kids' t-ball practice, the mailman, the guy next to you at the traffic light on your way home from work, the newscasters on your TV at night, the guy that picks up your garbage every Monday morning, the fucking cop that pulled you over a month ago, hell, maybe even your own family. So what's different? The difference is that none of them give a single squirt of piss about the one thing that you obsess over. Not in the least. It may seem crazy to you, and it does to me, but the truth of the matter is that the general public gives not one shit about your old, outdated, clunky hot rod. Even within the small circle of, quote, car guys, that is, guys who are interested in cars, we're an even smaller subgroup. We're a niche within a niche. And here's what I mean. Your average car guy is really just that. Average. Let's call him Dan. Dan lives in your typical suburban neighborhood. He has a perfectly manicured lawn, grills a mean burger, and calls his son Big Guy. Dan has a normal job, maybe outside sales. And he looks you in the eye when he shakes your hand. He drives the newer Dodge 1500 pickup with a tonneau cover on it to keep his golf clubs safe and sound. His wife drives a Honda Element. Dan brags about how much cargo space it has. There's a basketball hoop in the driveway to satisfy any desire for some impromptu game of horse with his son, Tyler, who, by the way, is turning out to be, quote, one hell of an athlete, according to Dan, who nobody asked. Now, our man Dan, he wears a dress shirt and slacks during the week, but boy, he looks forward to a t-shirt and jeans scenario on the weekends. That t-shirt, of course, is tucked in. And there in the middle of all this nauseating normalcy, his pride and joy, a 65 Mustang. But don't you dare call it that. According to him, it's a 64 and a half. One of the rare ones. Right. Behold, this is Dan. Dan is every man. And a typical pseudo car guy. Dan's the guy in the commercials for prescription drugs on your TV. You know, the commercials where the guy and his family are shown doing perfectly normal, happy things while the voiceover says, side effects may include vomiting, thoughts of suicide, sudden and uncontrollable rectal bleeding, or death. Yeah, that's Dan there in the garage, carefully taking the air cleaner off of his Mustang, wiping his brow, and giving his son a noogie in slow motion. That's who a lot of car guys are. Just normal guys. Painfully fucking normal. So there's guys like Dan, and then there's chumps like you and me. The incurable, addicted, hopeless hot rodders. We can't help it, and frankly, we don't want to be helped. This isn't just a hobby, not by a long shot. As cliche as it sounds, this is a way of life. It's all we think about. It's all we do. We rarely have other interests. Shit. We can't afford to have other interests. Now, Dan spreads his joys out, divvying up small portions here and there to things like playing golf, watching football, fishing, and yes, of course, keeping that Mustang in tip-top condition because, after all, he views it as an investment. But while he does that, we obsess. Our days are spent thinking about hot rods at work, nights with wrenches in our hands. Weekends are for swap meets and car shows and drag races, and of course for working on our own cars. We don't make an all-day event out of changing the oil in some boring muscle car while the TV in our temperature-controlled garage blares with mindless sports announcers. We crank up the music and get to work. We build cars. That is, from the ground up. Most guys are fine with their garage. It has a foosball table, a workbench, a bunch of neon beer signs, and a lazy boy. But that won't do for us. We don't give a shit about how Dan spent half a Saturday figuring out how to store his kayak from the ceiling, using a fucking rope and pulley system. Our workspaces have welders in them, not recliners, not posters with baseball players on them. We're building fucking cars, not birdhouses. The only breaks that we take are to eat, scan the internet for parts, and of course, that next project. Now, never mind that we aren't through with the one we're working on now. We must check to be sure there isn't something else out there right now for sale that we can't live without. We just have to make sure. It doesn't matter how much space we have, whether it's a small garage or some gigantic shop. We're always out of room. But we're still out there looking for what's available. What's next? We store our cars elsewhere when we run out of space. We hide them at our buddy's house because we don't want our wives to know that we bought another car. We can't fucking help it. This hot rod thing is a disease. There is no cure. It only stops for us when we die, and it occupies most of our bandwidth until we do. It's an obsession like no other. One that, if you allow it, will get a hold of you and take over. We let it, we surrender to it, and we wouldn't have it any other way. Honestly, could you imagine being normal? I can't think of a single thing worse. There you have it. Why can't you just be normal? ironandsteel.com. That story is somewhere on the third page. I wrote it, I don't know, a couple of years ago, but I just spotted it on there and thought, this is definitely more relevant than ever. It seems like every day we're a smaller and smaller portion of even the car community. I mean, the traditional hot rod and custom thing is just getting to be such a small thing. Guys, like I said in the story, guys that are into cars now, most of them are into shit that we don't care about at all. Muscle cars and trucks and, of course, fucking rat rods and that type of stuff. If you really want to go down that rabbit hole, there's, 90% of the car stuff has nothing to do with traditional hot rods and customs. So yeah, like I said, it's easy to lose track of that and forget how small of a community we really are with this hot rod shit. So anyway, that was the whole premise of that story, just a rant. There you have it. So I'm going to go into some Q&A stuff here. So I had gotten quite a few pretty good messages and questions come through via email and Instagram. So I'm just going to get into those. I'm just kind of going to go see how this goes. So the first question I got was, says, "Hey Jake, it would be cool if you could give us a little backstory on how you got started in this whole hot rod thing." Okay. So I guess I don't really know. Growing up, my dad, not a diehard car guy. He was interested in cars, but kind of like I mentioned in that story, didn't give a shit about hot rods. He was a muscle car guy. So, he's born in 59. So in high school, he was into muscle cars, Camaros and Chevelles and shit like that. So I definitely didn't grow up with this hot rod stuff, at all. If anything, I was into motorcycles, dirt bikes, motocross, things like that. So I didn't really I was into cars, obviously, right off the bat. But I didn't really get into the hot rod stuff until my early 20s. And really a lot of that, I kind of owe to, like a lot of us, owe a huge debt of gratitude to the Jalopy Journal and the Ham. I don't know how I stumbled onto it, but I think that's really where it started. I would see hot rods at shows and think, oh, wow, those are cool. But the Ham was such a resource and and is, not past tense. It still is. But especially back then, there was such a passionate community of diehard traditional hot rod and custom guys. And so once I started poking around on that, it was really only a matter of time. Within a few weeks, I was dragging home just shitty Model A projects and, thinking I was going to build a car out of them. Didn't possess any skills to do that, of course. But, I would drag home Model Ts and Model As and mock them up and, pretty much what I'm doing now, except it seems like I finish a higher ratio of cars these days. But yeah, so to answer that question, really the Jalopy Journal was responsible for sort of introducing me to the traditional hot rod and custom world. And then from there, really this whole thing's just been a product of the people I surround myself with, my friends, and just the people I've been lucky enough to meet and maintain relationships with, are like-minded people. And it's just sort of morphed into what it is. So it was a progression. I fucked around for a long time, not doing anything, spinning my wheels, not getting anything done. And then I finally bought a car that was halfway worth the shit, a Model A coupe that was running and driving. I finally got smart enough to just sort of save up and get something a little further along, which I outline in a story, that subject in a story called Get Some Patience Now, I think is what it's called. It's on ironandsteel.com, but the whole premise of that is basically like, look, quit spinning your wheels, buying bullshit projects, dragging them home and not getting anything done. Save up a little bit, get something further along, and spend a little more, get a little more, and actually get something done. So Get Some Patience Now is the name of the article. It's somewhere on page 2 or 3 of ironandsteel.com. That's worth checking out. So hopefully that answered your question. Maybe it didn't. I don't know. Let's see. Another question says, have you ever had to write something where you felt there wasn't much to tell? Short answer, no, not really. Because the way that, when I used to write for magazines and things like that, they always ask, are you interested in writing a story about this? It wasn't just like a task that was given to the writer. So it was always presented as a question. Would you like to write a story about this story for this car? And they'd send you a picture, or maybe you already knew the car. So if there were, very few instances where they're like super lame cars that I just wasn't into writing about, if there was, I would just say no. It's not my deal. Somebody else might have better luck writing that story or whatever. But short answer, not really. And in the case where there's maybe not a lot of, story about the car itself, like, the guy buys this car, it's a piece of shit, he fixes it up, and now it's cool. Like, there's not a story in that. So, in most cases anyway, I tend to focus on the story of the person just as much as the story of the car, because the two are intertwined. And, I always try to write in such a way that if you're not a car person, you can still read the story or listen to the story and be interested in it. So, like, I write stories that, like, my parents can read. They're not into hot rods, but they like a good story. So I've always tried to write that way, and it tends to work out pretty well for me. I've not really been in a position where I'm trying to piece together some shitty story about a car that I don't give a shit about. So hopefully that answered that question. Another one was, it would be cool to hear about the genesis of the Estranged Car Club. So I've thought about that. Myself and another guy, Travis, started the Estranged Car Club, I don't even know, 10 or 12 years ago maybe. Just because we wanted to join a car club, like the idea of a car club, but none of the local clubs really appealed, at least to me, as a whole. So the Estranged Car Club is a whole nother story. Maybe I should write someday, maybe I will, but the genesis of it was essentially, no interest in any of the other car clubs, and we just wanted to do something different. So it is a longer story than that, of course, and maybe one day, like I said, I'll write that story. But there's a lot to it, but that pretty much sums it up. So this says, what's more important to you, the cars themselves or preserving the history behind them? Interesting question. I guess it's a little bit of both, but of course you can't have one without the other. And these cars are a part of history, and preserving that's hugely important to me. So I guess I would say the history portion of it's more important, because we're losing it every day more and more. These older guys that are passing away are taking so much knowledge with them, and so much perspective of the way that things were, and just really the genesis of the modern, traditional hot rod community that we have now. All those guys that actually started that are dying every day. So with every day that goes by, we tend to lose, a few more of these guys. And if there aren't guys out there like me telling these stories, or, these great magazines that are still thankfully around, Hop Up, Speed and Culture, Rodder's Journal, if they come back, which who knows. But if there aren't guys out there actively telling these stories and keeping them alive, we're going to lose it. So, and I feel that more strongly every day. So the history portion, I guess, is the most important part, of course. So that question, actually, I won't mention names on all these, but that actually came from a friend of mine, Alex. And Alex owns a company called H&H Outfitters, and he has a brand called Steelhead. And if you're interested in outdoor stuff at all, fishing or any sort of outdoor stuff, you should go check out their website and check out their apparel, and it's just a bunch of killer stuff. Alex is a dear friend of mine. I've known him for a long time, and he's taken that not to get too far off topic, but he's taken that and just made it something incredible. So H&Houtfitters.com, I believe, is the website. Or if you just Google H&H Outfitters or Steelhead brand, you're going to find it. And it's a bunch of killer stuff. So speaking of which, another question says, do you have hobbies other than cars? Short answer, no. I don't. And I don't have time for it. This hot rod stuff just consumes every waking minute of my day, and that's all I think about. I'm interested in other things, of course, but it's weird shit. It's like paranormal stuff, or like cryptids, UFOs, true crime, all the basic white dude bullshit. That's me. So yeah. Other hobbies, no. Other interests, of course, music. I played music for a long time, played drums for some bands in a previous life. And so I'm passionate about music and weird stuff, I guess. But other hobbies, no, I don't. It's just cars. This says, do you do all of your own work? I'm assuming we're talking about cars, not like the website and writing and this podcast and stuff, but do you do all of your own work? No, not at all. I can, put stuff together and things like that, but I'm not like some skilled, custom hot rod builder. I'm just lucky enough to have really good friends that are a lot more talented than I am, that I can lean on to ask questions, or, in some cases, like East Bay Speed and Custom just chopped my 36.3 window. I could have never done that in a million years. If you would have sat me down and said, create this chop and I'll pay you $5 million when you get it right, I couldn't do it. So I have really good friends, really crafty, smart, industrious friends that know how to build stuff and put things together, that are always happy to answer my questions or help me out. And I lean on guys like my buddy Robbie and the guys at East Bay Speed and Custom for things that are just like totally outside my scope. So no, I don't do any painting or interior work or like heavy fabrication. I mean, I'm just like a normal hobbyist type, can put things together, but there's a ton of skilled guys out there, and I'm not one of them. I know it looks cool and I know how to get there. But there's a lot of people that I lean on definitely along the way. So, this just says, best advice to someone wanting to make a career out of writing. My best advice is don't flush that idea right down the toilet, because you're not going to make any money writing, period. So this is a pet project of mine. I do other things that pay my bills, and I'm passionate about hot rod stuff. And that's the way you should look at it too, because you're never in a million years going to make even a livable wage writing. There's hardly any magazines left. And I don't know what people's perception is of like what you get paid to write stories, but most of the time, like, these magazines are they're struggling to just stay in print. So, unless you're like Tony Thacker or Pat Ganal or one of those guys, the magazines want to pay you $150 or $100 to write a story, okay? And what they want is content, and they want you to write a 600-word story about the car and pay you $100 and move on to the next thing. I can't write you a story about what I had for fucking breakfast in 600 words, okay? So, it takes a lot of time to write a palatable story that people enjoy reading. So, $100 or $200 for me to spend 4 days, researching the socioeconomic climate of a certain city in 1952 so that I can put one blurb in a story about it, multiply that times 100 other things that, create a story, a good story. It just doesn't pencil. I mean, I spend 4 or 5 days writing a story sometimes, and I can't do that for $100. So, best advice for starting a career in writing, forget about it. Just, do something do something to make money, but the writing thing or whatever you think you're going to do, just look at it as a passion project, and that's it. So that's it. I had a few other questions, but I'm looking at this counter. We're already a lot deeper into this than I thought we were going to be. So I'm going to reserve some of these other questions for another day. And I think I'm just going to make the Q&A thing just a normal deal. Maybe I can answer 3 or 4 questions at the end of every podcast, and just do it that way. So I've got a whole nother page of questions, but I feel like we're already running long. So I'm just going to say thank you. Thanks for listening. Again, ironandsteel.com. That's the website. And I would encourage you to go there and check out all these stories. All the stories have photos associated with them. Check out the apparel. Speaking of which, you need to go and sign up, put your email in there, the subscribe thing on the website, so that you can be updated of when there's new stories, new apparel available. Because I'm about to release this series of t-shirts that is going to make you shit your pants. And I mean, if you enjoy the idea of shitting your pants, you need to pay attention, because this is it's a little too far out there to describe. All I can tell you is that it's serial killer themed, serial killer meets hot rod themed, and it's ridiculous, and you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. And I think even if you hate it, you're probably still going to buy it, because it's bitchin', totally bitchin'. Sign up, put your email in there, and in the coming weeks I'll do an email blast when it's ready, and the first one, it's a series of 3, and anyway, I'll email and put it on Instagram and all that stuff, but that's coming down the pipe here pretty soon. So ironandsteel.com, sign up for on the subscription thing to get alerts on new content and new stuff like that. And thanks again for being here, and we'll catch you on the next one. See you soon. Thanks.